The first time humans heard the faint hum of signals coming from the edge of the galaxy, no one knew exactly what it meant. For decades, Earth had sent probes and messages into space, hoping for a sign that we were not alone. Most of the galaxy had ignored us, treating humanity like a small, curious experiment. But now the signals were different. They were organized, precise, and unmistakably aware of human presence. Someone or something was watching. On Earth, the news caused both excitement and fear. Scientists studied the patterns day and night. Governments held emergency meetings, and ordinary people watched the skies, feeling a strange mix of wonder and anxiety. For some, it was proof that humanity had finally arrived in the cosmic arena. For others, it was a warning, a reminder that we were still fragile and untested. A council of leaders and experts from every corner of Earth was formed. They were the brightest minds, the people who had studied space, diplomacy, and war. Their job was clear: find out who was sending the signals and what they wanted. Messages were sent in return, carefully crafted to show curiosity, intelligence, and respect. Humanity was polite, cautious, and hopeful that reason and words could prevent any conflict. But the galaxy had been observing for a long time. It had seen humans grow from scattered tribes into a planet-spanning civilization capable of incredible technology and destruction. Somewhere among the stars, the observers whispered about Earth, questioning what humanity might do if pushed too far. Days turned into weeks, and then months. There was no immediate response, only silence. Earth scientists monitored every flicker of light, every unusual wave in space, searching for a sign of life. The people waited, and waiting became its own kind of pressure. Families went about their daily lives. Children played in fields that had once been battle zones. Cities grew taller and brighter, and yet every eye turned upward when night fell. Then finally a response arrived. Not in words as humans knew them, but in signals that were translated by the best minds on Earth. The message was chilling in its calmness. The galaxy had noticed Earth. We were being observed. They had been patient, they said, watching humans stumble, fight, learn, and grow. But now they were warning us. The galaxy expected restraint, obedience, and caution. Any further moves of aggression, they implied, would not go unnoticed. Humanity was stunned. On one hand, there was pride. Finally, our existence had been acknowledged by beings who had existed far longer than humans. On the other hand, there was fear. The message was not angry, but it carried an unspoken threat that was far more frightening. It meant we were being judged, and judgment in the galaxy was rarely gentle. At first, the leaders of Earth tried diplomacy. Messages were drafted, carefully edited, and sent back. They expressed peace, understanding, and cooperation. Humans explained their need to explore, to grow, to survive. They assured the galaxy that humanity meant no harm. There were nights when they wondered if it would be enough. But as the weeks went by, the answers became clearer. The galaxy did not see humans as equals or partners. They saw us as a small, noisy species, ambitious and unpredictable. They dismissed our messages with subtle mockery hidden between lines of polite words. What humans meant as friendly gestures, the galaxy interpreted as boldness, even arrogance. While the council debated how to respond, ordinary people on Earth were already feeling the tension. Workers in factories, students in classrooms, and pilots in orbiting ships all knew that something big was coming. News channels, social media, and even casual conversations were filled with questions. What did the galaxy want? Could we survive if they decided to act? Could humans show strength without starting a war? And so humanity waited, but waiting was no longer peaceful. The quiet nights under stars felt heavy, as if the entire cosmos was holding its breath. Everyone understood deep down that words alone might not protect us. But still hope lingered. Humans had always believed in talking, reasoning, and finding a way forward. The first step, they thought, must be words. Yet somewhere beyond the reach of Earth's sensors, the galaxy watched. It had seen the history of countless civilizations rise and fall. It knew that patience had limits. And it knew, in a way humans could not yet understand, that the story of Earth was about to take a turn that no one, not even the galaxy itself, could predict. For now, Earth prepared. Scientists studied the stars. Engineers refined the machines humans had built for exploration. Pilots trained for situations they hoped would never come. And ordinary people went on with their lives, unaware that their planet stood on the edge of a decision that could change the galaxy forever. Humanity had chosen to speak first, to hope that words could protect them. But the galaxy was listening, and listening often meant understanding more than anyone expected. And as the first signals crossed the void, as the stars twinkled above quiet cities and roaring factories alike, humanity felt a strange mixture of pride, fear, and anticipation. They were no longer alone, and the galaxy, for the first time, was watching in something close to terror. After months of tense waiting, the response from the galaxy finally came, and it was unlike anything humanity had imagined. It wasn't just a warning this time, it was mockery. The message arrived in patterns and codes that Earth's best minds had learned to understand, but behind the words and numbers, there was a tone that was impossible to ignore. The Alien Council, speaking for countless civilizations, treated humanity like children who had wandered too far from home. They laughed at the idea that humans could negotiate with them or survive in the greater galaxy without guidance. The Council's message was cold, precise, and cruel. It praised human ingenuity in a mocking way, saying that our planet had managed to survive despite repeated mistakes, conflicts, and failures. They pointed out our short history in cosmic terms, noting how fleeting and insignificant humanity seemed compared to the age and experience of their civilizations. The words were carefully chosen to sting, highlighting every flaw they could see while pretending to offer advice for survival. On Earth, the effect was immediate. In conference rooms, laboratories, and government halls, the leaders were stunned. The initial shock gave way to frustration, anger, and disbelief. Humanity had expected negotiation, perhaps even fear, but they had not expected ridicule. Every carefully crafted message had been dismissed as irrelevant. Every attempt to show reason or intelligence had been treated as a joke. The Council had underestimated something fundamental about humans. They had underestimated pride, resilience, and determination. Citizens reacted in different ways. Some felt hopeless, believing that the galaxy was too vast and powerful for humans to make any difference. Others, however, felt a fire ignite inside them, a mix of indignation and defiance. News channels were filled with passionate debates. People asked, how dare they mock us? How dare they treat an entire planet as though it were unworthy? Even children listening to the conversations of adults felt a strange mixture of fear and excitement. There was a sense that history was being written, and humanity had been insulted at the start. While the public reacted, the Council on Earth worked tirelessly to respond. Scientists, engineers, and diplomats convened around glowing screens and holographic projections. Every message back had to be carefully constructed, not to offend but to assert that humanity would not be dismissed so easily. Some leaders argued for patience and continued diplomacy, while others insisted that words had failed and that humans must prepare for the consequences of being taken lightly. As these debates raged, the people on the streets and in their homes could feel the tension in the air. Satellites monitored space around Earth, searching for unusual activity, while engineers in orbit and on the ground continued to test ships and weapons systems. Humanity had spent decades preparing for a peaceful expansion into the stars. But now it seemed that the galaxy would allow nothing to happen without a show of force. The Alien Council, however, remained distant and confident. In their eyes, humans were still young, small, and reckless. They had never faced a civilization like theirs and assumed Earth's threats were hollow. They had no idea that mocking humans would awaken something far stronger than anger, a determination that could not be dismissed. Back on Earth, ordinary people began to see the consequences of this mockery in small but telling ways. Scientists spoke openly about accelerating research into defense systems. Factories shifted to produce ships, engines, and weapons at unprecedented speeds. Students in universities studied strategy and engineering with a seriousness born from necessity. Even artists, musicians, and writers began creating works inspired by the growing tension, capturing the human spirit in ways that celebrated resilience and courage. The Alien Council's mockery became a rallying point for humanity. People felt united, bound together not just by nationality or culture, but by the shared understanding that the galaxy was judging them. In homes and offices, in classrooms and research labs, humans whispered to each other about pride, survival, and the need to prove themselves. The message was clear. If the galaxy expected weakness, humans would deliver something entirely different. Meanwhile, the leaders of Earth were forced to confront a difficult truth. Diplomacy alone would not work. Every word sent to the Council was dissected, twisted, and dismissed. Patience was no longer an option. The galaxy had decided that humans were insignificant, and the only way to change that perception was through action. The council believed humans would falter if challenged. But history had shown that humanity thrived under pressure, and now that pressure had reached its limit, a sense of urgency swept across every part of human civilization. The development of advanced technologies that had once been slow and cautious became rapid and daring. Scientists worked day and night, driven by both fear and determination. Engineers built ships that were faster, more durable, and capable of maneuvers no alien fleet would anticipate. Soldiers trained rigorously, learning tactics and strategies that combined human creativity with advanced technology. Every citizen in some way contributed to the preparation. Humanity was no longer waiting politely. It was preparing to be taken seriously. Despite all the preparation, fear remained. People knew that the galaxy was vast and powerful, capable of destruction on a scale humans had only imagined. Yet the mockery from the council had stirred a stubborn resolve. Humanity could not simply bow and apologize. To do so would invite further contempt, perhaps even annihilation. If humans were going to survive, they had to show the galaxy that they could not be laughed at, that they could not be ignored. The weeks that followed were filled with tension and quiet determination. In homes, families watched the skies, sensing that something momentous was approaching. In laboratories, computers hummed and screens glowed as calculations were made and strategies tested. In the hearts of ordinary citizens, a mixture of fear, hope, and pride grew. Humanity had been mocked, underestimated, and dismissed, and the reaction was not panic. It was preparation. Then came the realization that the mockery was not just words, it was a test. The galaxy had underestimated human resolve, just as it had underestimated human curiosity, ambition, and adaptability for centuries. Now that miscalculation would become clear. Humanity had been cornered, and when cornered, humans often discovered strengths they did not know they had. Across Earth, ordinary people began talking about courage, about standing tall in the face of ridicule. Scientists debated tactics and technologies. Soldiers prepared for possibilities no one wanted to imagine. Leaders grappled with impossible decisions. And somewhere in the quiet moments as humans gazed at the stars, a simple truth became clear. The galaxy might watch in judgment, might laugh in scorn, but humanity would not bend. This mockery, meant to weaken or humiliate, had done the opposite. It had united Earth in a way nothing else could. Humans were no longer thinking only of exploration, diplomacy, or survival. They were thinking of proving that their species could rise above condescension, could act with intelligence, creativity, and courage, and could survive where others doubted them. The galaxy may have laughed at humanity, but the laughter would not last forever. For the first time, humans began to feel the weight of the entire cosmos watching them, not just with curiosity, but with expectation. And deep down, in the hearts of those who had always dreamed of the stars, there was a spark of defiance that could not be extinguished. The Council's mockery had awakened something dangerous for the galaxy, a species that refused to be dismissed. Humans were no longer simply waiting for answers or hoping for peace. They were planning, building, and preparing for a future in which they would be taken seriously. And as the Alien Council continued to underestimate Earth, humanity quietly, steadily, and deliberately began to show that mockery could awaken a force far greater than anyone had imagined. For now, the galaxy continued to watch, still confident in its superiority. But across Earth, from the quiet suburbs to the bustling cities, from laboratories to training grounds in orbit, a single truth became undeniable. Humans had been mocked, humans had been dismissed, and humans had decided that words alone were no longer enough. Something far larger, far more powerful, and far more determined was beginning to stir. And so the stage was set. The galaxy had laughed and humanity had listened. But listening was only the beginning. What came next would not be words, it would be action. And the galaxy, watching in its confidence and condescension, had no idea what humanity was truly capable of. Humanity had been mocked, dismissed, and underestimated. The Alien Council's words, meant to belittle, had sparked something far stronger than fear: determination. Across the planet, every nation, every community, and every individual began to feel the weight of the challenge ahead. It was no longer enough to watch the skies or send polite messages. Humans realized that to survive, to prove themselves, they had to act. In cities, towns, and remote research stations, the first signs of preparation appeared. Factories that once produced cars, electronics, or consumer goods were quickly converted into centers for building spacecraft, engines, and advanced machinery. Engineers worked day and night, redesigning ships to be faster, stronger, and more versatile. They studied every detail of alien signals, every known pattern in their technology, and devised methods to counter possibilities that no one had yet witnessed. The scientists were equally relentless. Every lab became a hub of intense focus and creativity. Teams of researchers explored propulsion, weapons systems, and energy shields, often pushing their knowledge to the absolute limit. Every breakthrough, every small success was celebrated, but no one allowed themselves to relax. Humanity understood that even a minor mistake could have catastrophic consequences if the galaxy decided to act against them. Meanwhile, soldiers and pilots trained with a sense of urgency unlike any before. They were not just learning techniques for battle. They were learning to think creatively, to improvise, to trust in human instincts as much as in technology. In simulated environments, they tested scenarios against enemies that only existed in imagination, always pushing to see how far they could go, how fast they could react, and how resilient they could be under pressure. Every ordinary citizen, too, felt the shift. Students studied not just science or history, but strategy and problem-solving, understanding that their generation would play a role in humanity's response. Civilians contributed by volunteering, assisting in production, or simply supporting the morale of communities. People talked more about courage, unity, and responsibility. A sense of shared purpose swept across the globe, uniting humanity in a way never seen before. The leaders of Earth realized that preparation could not be limited to technology or armies. They needed strategy, diplomacy, and contingency plans all at once. They met constantly, devising scenarios, anticipating alien tactics, and planning ways to turn every advantage they could muster. Every decision was debated with intensity. Every possibility weighed against survival, ingenuity, and ethical responsibility. Humanity had no intention of becoming conquerors, but they were determined to protect their world at all costs. At night, people would look up at the stars differently than before. The twinkling lights were no longer distant, untouchable points of beauty. They were reminders that the galaxy had seen them, judged them, and doubted them, but they were also reminders of possibility, of what humans could achieve if they refused to bow to ridicule. Children played under these stars, imagining ships that could outrun anything, weapons that could defend their home, and heroes who represented the courage of everyone on Earth. Even as the preparation intensified, fear remained a constant companion. Humans understood the scale of the challenge. The galaxy was vast, ancient, and far more powerful than anything Earth had encountered. Entire civilizations had risen and fallen in its shadow. But the mockery of the Council had made one thing clear. To survive, humans could no longer wait. They had to move forward with confidence, even when the odds seemed impossible. Communities began to share knowledge like never before. Scientists in one country collaborated with engineers across oceans. Pilots trained with tactics developed by soldiers halfway around the world. Every resource, every idea, every bit of ingenuity was pooled together. The preparation was no longer just a government project. It had become a global movement. Humans were learning from each other at an extraordinary pace, discovering strengths they had never realized existed. The first test of this new readiness came unexpectedly. An unmanned probe, designed to explore the edge of the solar system, detected unusual activity far beyond the planets humans had colonized. At first it seemed like nothing, just another anomaly in space. But the signals, when analyzed, revealed a subtle but undeniable pattern. The galaxy was watching more closely than before. Their presence was not only judgmental but also vigilant. Every maneuver, every transmission from Earth was being tracked. This realization strengthened the resolve of the human teams. They were not just preparing for a fight. They were preparing to be noticed, to be respected, to prove that their species could rise to the challenge. Engineers worked on stealth technologies to make ships harder to detect. Scientists developed faster communication networks to coordinate actions in real time. Pilots practiced evasive maneuvers that relied on instinct as much as machinery. Every action was a step toward demonstrating that humanity could not be ignored. On a deeper level, the preparation transformed how humans viewed themselves. The mockery of the Council had forced them to confront their weaknesses and their potential. They realized that fear could drive them to despair, but determination could drive them to heights no one had imagined. It became clear that survival was not just about machines or weapons. It was about the human spirit itself. Creativity, courage, and resilience had become as crucial as any technology. As months turned into years, the transformation of Earth's society became apparent. Cities were hubs of innovation, constantly producing new ideas, machines, and strategies. Schools emphasized not just knowledge, but adaptability, critical thinking, and teamwork. Every human in some way had become part of the preparation. It was no longer a project for a few leaders or scientists. It was a mission for the entire species. Even with all the progress, leaders knew that they could not anticipate every challenge. The galaxy had the advantage of experience, size, and knowledge. Humans could only rely on ingenuity, adaptability, and an unshakable determination to survive. And yet, for the first time in history, the thought of confrontation no longer caused panic. Humans had discovered that when pushed to the edge, they could rise higher than anyone expected. In the quiet moments, individuals reflected on what had happened. Children who had once dreamed of flying in space now imagined commanding fleets, protecting their planet, and proving that humans could face any challenge. Scientists who had worked in isolation now felt a profound connection to everyone else, contributing to the preparation. Soldiers who had trained in simulations now understood the weight of responsibility, knowing that every skill, every decision, and every action mattered. And through it all, a single truth emerged. Humanity had become something more than the sum of its parts. The Alien Council's mockery, intended to belittle, had sparked a unity, creativity, and determination that no one could have predicted. Earth was no longer simply a planet waiting to be noticed. It had become a planet preparing to show the galaxy that underestimation would be humanity's greatest mistake. Every day, humanity moved forward. Ships were launched for testing. Weapon systems were refined, and simulations ran constantly to anticipate every possible outcome. People continued their daily lives, but nothing was the same. Conversations had purpose. Education had urgency. Work had meaning beyond survival. It was now preparation for a moment that would define the species. By the time the first fleets of advanced ships were ready, the galaxy would have already taken notice. Every maneuver, every calculated improvement, every trained soldier and pilot was a statement. Humanity was not weak, not naive, and certainly not to be dismissed. The Alien Council's mockery had failed to break them. Instead, it had forged a species ready to stand, ready to respond, and ready to fight if necessary. And so Earth waited. But this waiting was no longer passive. It was preparation, strategy, and determination. Humans had chosen to meet mockery with action, to meet doubt with resilience, and to meet fear with courage. The galaxy, confident and dismissive, had yet to understand what it had provoked. In the silence between stars, humans worked tirelessly. In homes, factories, schools, and orbiting stations, they honed their skills and technology. And though the galaxy watched, it could not yet see the full scope of what was growing. A species united, creative, and determined to be counted among the stars. For humanity, Part 3 of the story was clear. Preparation was not optional. It was survival, pride, and proof that they would not be dismissed. And as the first glimmers of the future took shape, it became undeniable that the galaxy had underestimated the human spirit, and that underestimation would cost them in ways they could never imagine. The first clash came quietly, almost unexpectedly. Humanity had been preparing for years, building ships, testing strategies, and training every pilot and soldier for the moment when words would no longer be enough. But when the alien fleet appeared near the edge of human-controlled space, the true scale of the threat became terrifyingly clear. Thousands of alien ships moved in formation, their presence dominating the dark void. Each one massive, sharp-edged, and designed for both speed and destruction. From the command centers on Earth, leaders watched in tense silence. Every screen, every radar pulse, and every satellite feed showed the approaching fleet. There was no panic, not yet. There was focus. Humanity had prepared for this moment, and every effort, every decision, and every strategy would now be put to the test. For months, simulations had played out in labs and classrooms, and now the theory had to meet reality. On the surface, civilians continued their lives, but a quiet tension hung over every city. People glanced at the skies with unease. Children asked questions that had no easy answers, and families whispered about courage and hope. The knowledge that a vast alien fleet was approaching was frightening, but it also united people. Across Earth, humanity understood that this moment would define them, not just as individuals but as a species. In orbit, the first human ships took positions. Sleek, agile, and designed with ingenuity and speed in mind, they formed lines and grids that were both defensive and strategic. Pilots felt their hearts pound, aware that every choice could be life or death. They had trained endlessly, but no training could perfectly replicate the tension of the first real encounter. Still, they trusted in themselves, in their technology, and in the countless humans who had worked tirelessly behind the scenes to make this moment possible. The alien fleet approached with confidence, expecting minimal resistance. Their technology was advanced, their formations precise, and their strategies honed over centuries. They assumed that humans would falter, that fear or inexperience would make Earth an easy target. But as the first human ships launched countermeasures, evading the initial strikes with surprising speed and maneuverability, the aliens realized they had misjudged the species they had mocked. The battle began in silence before chaos erupted. Alien ships unleashed beams of energy that tore through space, aimed at human vessels with lethal precision. But humans responded with unexpected tactics: decoy drones, sudden directional shifts, and coordinated attacks designed to confuse and outmaneuver the larger fleet. Every move reflected not just technology, but human creativity and adaptability. The aliens had planned for calculations and strategy, but they had not counted on unpredictability born of instinct and intuition. On Earth, the command centers were alive with activity. Scientists monitored energy readings, engineers sent updates to ships in real time, and leaders coordinated strategies across continents and orbital stations. Every small success was celebrated quietly, saving a ship, outmaneuvering a strike, or disrupting enemy formation. But there was no room for complacency. The galaxy's eyes were watching, and humanity knew that one mistake could be fatal. Pilots felt a mixture of fear and exhilaration. They had trained for this, yet nothing could fully prepare them for the scale of the encounter. Each decision mattered. A wrong turn, a miscalculation in speed, or a delay in communication could mean destruction. But every time they succeeded, they felt a growing confidence that they could hold their own. The alien fleet was powerful, but it was not infallible. Humans had discovered that even against overwhelming odds, ingenuity, teamwork, and courage could shift the tide. From orbiting stations, scientists and engineers observed patterns in the alien fleet, noting weaknesses that could be exploited. Humans realized that the aliens relied heavily on strict formations and predictable attack patterns. By studying these patterns and adapting quickly, human pilots could exploit gaps, create confusion, and turn the enemy's strengths into vulnerabilities. Every new tactic was tested immediately, and each success bolstered morale across the entire human effort. Back on Earth, people watched live feeds of the battle with a mixture of awe and anxiety. Cities went dark at times as emergency power grids activated. Communication lines became critical, and every household held its breath. Humanity's unity became apparent not just in strategy but in spirit. Teachers explained the science behind maneuvers to curious students. Families discussed courage and sacrifice, and entire communities supported the effort through small but meaningful contributions. The planet was alive with collective focus, bound together by the shared determination to survive. Despite the victories, the cost was real. Some human ships were lost, torn apart by alien energy beams or caught in impossible positions. Pilots sacrificed themselves to protect others. Engineers worked frantically to repair damaged vessels, and leaders faced impossible decisions about priorities and strategy. Every loss was a reminder of the stakes, but also of humanity's resolve. Each sacrifice strengthened the determination of those who remained, knowing that giving up was not an option. The alien fleet, for the first time, showed signs of doubt. Their confidence had been shattered by the unexpected resilience of humans. The mockery that had begun so many years ago now seemed irrelevant. The galaxy's perception of Earth was shifting. Observers, long used to the rise and fall of civilizations, watched with growing fascination. Here was a species that could adapt, innovate, and fight not out of anger or cruelty, but out of the desire to survive and protect their home. As the battle continued, human forces began to take the initiative. They used the aliens' expectations against them, baiting ships into traps, creating diversions, and striking at critical points with precision. Each successful maneuver revealed a level of coordination and creativity that no simulation could have predicted. The alien fleet, while powerful, was rigid. Humanity was unpredictable. Humanity was alive with ingenuity and determination. Civilians on Earth followed every update, their emotions a mixture of hope and fear. Children learned the value of courage not through stories or imagination, but through observation of their species' resilience. Families whispered about the pilots who risked everything, the engineers who built incredible ships, and the scientists who predicted and countered alien tactics. Humanity was witnessing itself in action, learning the true extent of its own capability. The first major victory came when human ships managed to disable a portion of the alien formation without significant losses. The maneuver was both brilliant and daring. Smaller, faster ships exploited gaps while coordinated energy pulses disrupted alien systems. Across Earth, celebrations were muted but heartfelt. Humanity had proven that even against a superior force, it could survive, adapt, and respond. The mockery of the Council now felt distant, almost foolish. Yet there was no time to relax. The alien fleet was still vast, still dangerous, and still capable of destruction on a scale humans could barely imagine. Leaders reminded everyone that each action mattered, that the battle was far from over. Still, the confidence of human forces grew. The combination of preparation, adaptability, and creativity allowed them to challenge assumptions and face danger without surrendering. In space, pilots began to understand each other instinctively. Communication became almost second nature. They learned to anticipate maneuvers, support each other in moments of crisis, and exploit opportunities as a single, unified force. Humanity's ability to collaborate, to act decisively under pressure, and to innovate in real time became their greatest weapon. The alien fleet was powerful, but it could not match the flexibility and resilience of humans working together. As hours passed, the alien fleet began to retreat slightly, recognizing the unexpected strength and ingenuity of humanity. Their attacks became cautious, hesitant, and fragmented. They had assumed that humans would crumble under pressure, but instead, they faced a species that was learning faster, adapting faster, and fighting with a determination that was impossible to calculate. On Earth, the relief was palpable. Citizens cheered quietly in homes and streets. They had watched their species face the unimaginable, and for the first time humanity had proven itself not just capable, but formidable. This first clash would be remembered as the moment the galaxy learned that humans were not to be underestimated. It was not a complete victory, but it was proof that action, courage, and unity could defy expectations. Even as the battle ended for the day, humans did not rest. Engineers repaired damaged ships, scientists analyzed data, and pilots trained for the next engagement. Every lesson learned in that first clash became part of a growing knowledge base. Humanity had survived, had adapted, and had fought with ingenuity and courage. The galaxy's perception of Earth had begun to shift, and the Alien Council's confidence had been shaken. The first clash was more than a battle. It was a statement. Humanity had shown that it could rise to the occasion, that mockery and dismissal could fuel determination rather than fear. It had shown that the combination of preparation, creativity, and unity could turn disadvantage into opportunity. And it had shown the galaxy that humans, though underestimated, were capable of facing even the greatest threats with courage and intelligence. As Earth looked up at the stars that night, people felt a mix of relief, pride. The first clash had been survived. Humanity had faced the alien fleet and had held its ground, proving that courage, ingenuity, and preparation could defy even the most intimidating odds. But the true impact of that battle went far beyond the skirmishes in space. Across the galaxy, observers began to take notice, and the perception of Earth, once dismissed as insignificant, started to change. For centuries, the galaxy had seen civilizations rise and fall. Some expanded aggressively, only to vanish in the wake of larger powers. Others were cautious, seeking peace and alliances. Humans, however, were different. They had been mocked, underestimated, and even dismissed outright. Yet in their first real encounter, they had demonstrated something that no civilization could ignore: resilience. Back on Earth, the mood was complex. People celebrated quietly, but there was no room for complacency. Scientists pored over the data from the first battle, searching for ways to improve, to strengthen, and to anticipate the next move of the alien fleet. Engineers worked tirelessly to repair and upgrade ships, making them faster, more durable, and capable of more precise maneuvers. Soldiers and pilots trained endlessly, refining tactics that had proven effective and preparing for scenarios that were even more dangerous. The citizens of Earth, too, felt the change. Families who had once lived with quiet anxiety now carried a quiet pride. Children learned the value of courage, creativity, and unity, not through stories but through the example of their species. People spoke more openly about sacrifice, responsibility, and hope. Humanity had faced an overwhelming force and had not only survived but had held its own. That truth resonated deeply, inspiring a collective confidence that had been absent for centuries. In the vast reaches of space, alien civilizations began to reassess their assumptions. They had believed humans to be naive, impulsive, and easy to intimidate. The first class shattered that belief. Analysts from distant systems calculated the unexpected resilience and adaptability of human forces. Some civilizations began to reconsider alliances, treaties, and strategies, realizing that Earth could no longer be ignored. The galaxy had underestimated humans, and that mistake would have consequences. The Alien Council, in particular, began to feel the first stirrings of concern. Their earlier messages, intended to mock and belittle, had not brought submission or fear. Instead, they had provoked preparation, ingenuity, and unexpected strength. As they observed human actions more closely, they saw that Earth's species was capable of more than simple survival. They were capable of strategy, creativity, and adaptation on a scale that could challenge even the most advanced fleets. On Earth, leaders convened to discuss the implications. They understood that this was more than a single battle, it was a turning point. Humanity had proven that it could survive confrontation, but the galaxy's attention now meant that every action would be scrutinized. Every decision carried weight, not only for immediate survival but for how humans would be perceived among the stars. Diplomacy would be more complicated, strategy more vital, and unity more necessary than ever before. Human engineers and scientists worked in tandem to develop new technology inspired by the first encounter. Energy shields were strengthened, propulsion systems were refined, and weaponry became more precise. Every improvement was aimed not just at survival, but at demonstrating capability, adaptability, and intelligence. Humans wanted the galaxy to understand that they were no longer a species to be underestimated, mocked, or ignored. Meanwhile, the pilots who had survived the first clash became instructors, teaching new recruits the lessons learned in real combat. They emphasized adaptability, teamwork, and creative problem-solving. Every new pilot was trained to think like a human, not just a soldier, using intuition, courage, and strategy to turn situations that seemed hopeless into opportunities for success. The spirit of resilience spread from ships in orbit to the classrooms and training grounds on Earth. The first victories had a ripple effect across human society. People began to act with a sense of purpose that was previously unimaginable. Artists, writers, and thinkers reflected on courage, ingenuity, and survival, celebrating the human spirit in ways that inspired others. Every individual, in their own way, contributed to a shared understanding that humanity was no longer passive. It was active, aware, and determined. The alien fleets continued to monitor human activity closely. They saw the ongoing upgrades, the coordination, and the ingenuity of Earth's species. Observers began to whisper about the unexpected strength of humans, sharing analysis that painted a different picture than the dismissive assumptions of the Council. For the first time, other civilizations in the galaxy considered the possibility that Earth could influence outcomes far beyond its planetary system. Despite this growing recognition, Earth remained cautious. Leaders understood that the Alien Council's power was immense and that future confrontations could be far more devastating. They balanced pride with prudence, confidence with strategy. Every move was measured, calculated, and informed by the lessons of the first clash. Humanity had learned to survive, but survival alone was not enough. They had to prove capability, intelligence, and unity. The sense of pride and accomplishment among humans was tempered by responsibility. Everyone on Earth understood that their actions now carried consequences across the galaxy. A single mistake could undo years of preparation or spark conflict that might have been avoided. Yet, even in the face of this pressure, humans did not falter. The first clash had taught them that fear could be managed, that unity could overcome doubt, and that determination could create strength where others expected weakness. The Alien Council began to reconsider their approach. Their mockery, once a tool to belittle, had proven counterproductive. Humans were learning, adapting, and preparing with a speed and creativity that no observer had anticipated. Strategies that relied on intimidation and superiority now seemed insufficient. The galaxy had expected fear, submission, and incompetence. Instead, it had witnessed resilience, innovation, and courage. Across Earth, ordinary citizens felt the impact of these changes. Communities became more engaged, more informed, and more connected. Education emphasized problem-solving, creativity, and collaboration. Families discussed responsibility and courage, passing down values that had been tested in the harshest of circumstances. Humanity's resilience became part of daily life, reflected in the way people worked, learned, and supported each other. As humans prepared for the future, they also looked outward with renewed confidence. Exploratory missions were launched, combining scientific research with strategic reconnaissance. Every mission was designed to gather information, test technology, and demonstrate capability. Humans understood that their actions now sent a message across the stars. They were not passive observers. They were active participants in shaping their destiny. The ripple effects extended further. Civilizations that had once ignored Earth now observed with growing respect. Analysts debated the potential of humans, considering them not only as survivors but as a species capable of significant influence. Alliances shifted, strategies were reconsidered, and the Alien Council faced increasing pressure to treat humanity with caution. What had started as mockery had inadvertently elevated Earth's status in the galaxy. The leadership on Earth continued to emphasize preparation and prudence. While pride and confidence had grown, they never lost sight of the challenges ahead. Scientists, engineers, and pilots continued to refine systems, test tactics, and anticipate every possible scenario. Civilians contributed through innovation, education, and support, creating a society united not only by survival, but by purpose. Humanity had proven that it could face overwhelming odds and emerge stronger. The first clash had been a test, and humans had passed, not just through technology or strategy, but through ingenuity, courage, and unity. Every victory, every adaptation, and every act of preparation reinforced the message. Earth would not be dismissed, mocked, or ignored. In the vast reaches of the galaxy, the perception of humanity began to change. What had once been a species laughed at and underestimated was now seen as capable, resilient, and unpredictable. The Alien Council and many other civilizations realized that Earth could not be approached with arrogance or dismissal. Humans had demonstrated that they were not only survivors but potential players in the larger cosmic story. For humanity, the lessons of the first battle were clear. Resilience, creativity, and unity were their greatest strengths. The galaxy would continue to watch, but Earth had proven that it was no longer a passive participant. Humans had chosen action over words, determination over fear, and courage over submission. That choice had reshaped their place in the cosmos, and set the stage for a future in which humanity would be recognized, respected, and feared for their ingenuity and spirit. Across Earth, people gazed at the stars with pride, hope, and determination. The first clash had changed everything, not just in space but in the hearts of humans themselves. They had learned that mockery could be transformed into motivation, doubt could become determination, and fear could be turned into courage. Humanity had begun to write its place in the galaxy, one act of ingenuity, preparation, and unity at a time. And as the galaxy watched, the lesson became undeniable. Humans could not be. The years of preparation, training, and vigilance had brought humanity to this moment. The galaxy had watched first with curiosity, then with condescension, and finally with awe. Humans had survived the first clash, adapted, and demonstrated that they were not to be underestimated. But now the true consequence of their actions became clear. This was no longer just a battle for survival. It was a statement to the galaxy that humanity had arrived, not to beg, but to claim its place among the stars. On Earth, people went about their lives with an unusual mixture of calm and alertness. Children played in open fields, schools continued, and work carried on in factories and offices. Yet beneath the surface, a quiet tension remained. Everyone understood that the galaxy was no longer distant and indifferent. It was watching closely, analyzing and recalculating assumptions about the species it had once mocked. Humanity had shifted from being an observer in the cosmos to an active participant whose actions could no longer be ignored. The Alien Council, which had once dismissed humans as insignificant, now faced a reality they had not anticipated. Their earlier messages, intended to humiliate and intimidate, had backfired spectacularly. Humans had transformed mockery into motivation, doubt into determination, and fear into resilience. Across their fleets, commanders debated cautiously. The arrogance that had once guided their approach had been replaced by careful observation and reconsideration. In orbit and across Earth's surface, human forces prepared for what they knew might be the most critical moments yet. Ships were upgraded with the latest technology, weapons systems refined, and pilots trained for maneuvers more complex than ever before. Scientists simulated countless scenarios, each designed to anticipate the galaxy's response to human strategy and ingenuity. Every citizen, in their own way, contributed to this effort through technology, innovation, and unwavering support. The first contact that followed this period of preparation was not hostile, but it carried unmistakable tension. Alien ships arrived in formations that suggested caution rather than aggression. It was clear they had recalculated their perception of humanity. Communications were attempted once again, but this time the messages were different. The Alien Council spoke with respect, acknowledging Earth's technological and strategic achievements. They recognized that humans were not merely survivors. They were a species capable of ingenuity, courage, and rapid adaptation. Even as diplomacy emerged cautiously, humans knew that their actions had spoken louder than words. The first clash, the preparation that followed, and the calculated displays of skill had proven one undeniable truth. Humanity could not be dismissed or underestimated. Across the galaxy, whispers spread. Civilizations that had once ignored Earth now regarded it with curiosity, caution, and even admiration. The mockery of the past was replaced with recognition of human potential. On Earth, the impact of this recognition was profound. Citizens felt a renewed sense of pride and purpose. Communities shared stories of heroism, perseverance, and creativity, celebrating the resilience that had defined humanity's response to the galaxy's challenge. Children learned not only about survival but about courage and ingenuity. Education emphasized adaptability, critical thinking, and collaboration, preparing the next generation to face whatever challenges might arise. Yet the human leaders understood that this recognition came with responsibility. Being respected by the galaxy meant that Earth could not act recklessly. Every decision carried implications for the future, and every demonstration of power had to be balanced with prudence. Humanity had learned that courage and ingenuity could command attention, but wisdom was necessary to maintain it. The Alien Council, now observing humans more carefully than ever, realized that the species they had mocked had transformed themselves in a way few civilizations could match. Humans had turned disadvantage into opportunity, mockery into motivation, and fear into determination. Every fleet maneuver, technological advancement, and strategic choice sent a message that was impossible to ignore. Humanity was capable of surviving, adapting, and shaping its destiny in ways the galaxy had not anticipated. For humans, the final moments of this chapter were about consolidation rather than conflict. Pilots trained in formations that emphasized flexibility and innovation. Ships were tested in coordinated maneuvers, and every system was refined for efficiency and resilience. Scientists and engineers continued to innovate, not simply for battle, but to demonstrate that human creativity extended beyond warfare. It encompassed exploration, understanding, and collaboration. Across Earth, ordinary citizens contributed in ways large and small. Teachers explained scientific breakthroughs in accessible ways, inspiring curiosity and confidence. Families discussed strategy and resilience, passing down values forged through years of preparation. Communities worked together to maintain infrastructure, morale, and readiness. Humanity's unity, born of necessity, became a defining feature of its identity. In the final reckoning, the galaxy learned a lesson that would echo for centuries. Humanity could not be dismissed, mocked, or underestimated. Every action taken by humans, from the first clash to the careful display of strategic preparation, demonstrated a species capable of rising above challenges with courage, ingenuity, and collaboration. The alien council's arrogance had been replaced with respect, and distant civilizations began to approach Earth with caution, curiosity, and acknowledgement of its capabilities. As humans gazed at the stars, they felt a mixture of pride and humility. The galaxy had observed their journey from mockery to recognition, and humanity had emerged not only intact but stronger, wiser, and more confident in its identity. The choice to act rather than plead, to prepare rather than hope for mercy, had defined their species' place among the stars. The final lesson was clear. Courage, creativity, and unity could reshape destiny. Humans had faced the unimaginable, transformed mockery into strength, and gained recognition that had once seemed impossible. The galaxy would never again see Earth as insignificant. Humanity had shown that even in the face of overwhelming odds, determination, intelligence, and resilience could command respect. And so, as the stars twinkled above quiet cities and roaring factories alike, humans understood that their story had changed. The galaxy had witnessed their journey, and the choices they had made had created a future where they were no longer observers but active participants. Earth had risen to a challenge that had once seemed insurmountable, and in doing so had secured its place in the cosmos. Humanity had chosen battle over words, action over hesitation, and courage over fear. The galaxy, once confident in its superiority, had learned to recognize the strength, ingenuity, and resilience of the species it had underestimated. In the quiet after the storm, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter for humanity, as if acknowledging the arrival of a force that could not be ignored. In the end, the story of Earth was not about conquest or destruction. It was about survival, determination, and the human spirit. The galaxy had watched in terror, not because of violence alone, but because humanity had proven that it could rise, adapt, and thrive where others might have fallen. The mockery, the doubt, and the underestimation had become catalysts for growth, forging a species capable of shaping its own destiny. And as humans continued to look outward, toward the endless expanse of stars, they knew one thing with certainty. The galaxy would never forget the day humanity chose action over words, courage over fear, and unity over division. Earth had claimed its place among the stars, not through arrogance, but through determination, ingenuity, and the unyielding spirit of its people. Humanity had walked a path few believed possible. They had faced ridicule, defied expectation, and emerged stronger, wiser, and more united. The galaxy had watched in terror, and now it understood. Humans were no longer a species to be underestimated. They were a force of creativity, courage, and resilience, and their story was only beginning.